Perfect. Good morning, everyone. How's it going? So I just want to start out and say thank you so much for having me here. I am very, very used to speaking at terrifying and brutally boring insurance conferences. So thank you, this warm, fuzzy room of culture, HR people. You guys rock. Before we get started, I did want to do a very quick exercise with you guys. I try and live my life by the mantra of getting comfortable, feeling uncomfortable, and I really do try and live by that. So I'm up here right now. I'm pretty uncomfortable. You guys are all staring at me. I'm a little nervous. It's early morning. I want to make you guys uncomfortable to balance the room a little bit. So if we could take 2 seconds, find a person on the left or the right, behind or in front, and just tell them one thing that terrifies you, that you are deeply afraid of. Just go really quick. Okay, I didn't know you guys were going to talk so much. So we're good? You guys feeling uncomfortable? Bring it back. Bring it all back. Perfect. So hopefully now you guys are feeling a little bit uncomfortable. I'm feeling uncomfortable. We're all one big happy family. So I'm Adam Hare. I'm the current vice president of Hare Insurance Brokers. I want to start out by also saying I'm not claiming to profess to be a culture guru or wizard. I'm only here today to share our story and what we've been working on. So it is a family-run company. I've been there for about 6 years now, and we've been on a really huge culture shift, and I'm excited to kind of share that journey with you. So I actually grew up, I had a creative background from the get-go. I started my first business when I was 17 years old, and I ended up landing my dream job and spending about 10 years at Universal Music Canada. Again, in my early 20s, that was like the perfect job. I get to work with the likes of Headley and Justin Bieber and Tragically Hip and had this amazing job that I can never dream of having. So right now you're asking yourself, how in the hell did you end up in insurance? And I often still ask myself that question the odd time. But as you can tell, it was a family-run company. That's my dad with the sweet mustache there. And my grandfather actually started the business. He bought a small book of business in 1963. He's since passed, and my father's ran the business for the past 30 years. And I'm the third generation up-and-comer. Very fortunate to have the opportunity, but also understanding that we have a pretty big journey to go. It's been a business that's almost around for 100 years. How do you change culture in a place that's been around for 100 years and that really hasn't had too much movement? So, typically speaking, where I got my start was working in these creative offices, right? The insurance industry was at a really weird, awesome, kind of different state in the fact that it was being disrupted. Our buying patterns are changing and the consumer's changing. How does an insurance office that's been around for 100 years start to kind of react? So they had no idea. They were great at selling products and knowing insurance knowledge, but didn't know how to kind of change and adapt to this growing customer. All the while, I was over here on the left side, building out my digital skill set and understanding this online space, and lo and behold, Dad and I finally met about 7 years ago, and we had a dinner conversation. And it was pretty quick, but I left that meeting with the title of marketing director for the company. Typically speaking, this was an environment I was used to. So working in creative agencies and working for Universal, you're around passionate people. A lot of creative people just happen to be really passionate about what they do. We had a relaxed environment. We showed up every day kind of when we wanted. We left when we wanted. We high-fived at the end of the day. We worked on really big projects, but we knew what we had to get done, and we weren't micromanaged. I was so naive. I thought this was the way that the world worked. I had no idea that there was people waking up unhappy going to work. I actually had friends and heard stories about guys complaining about, oh, I'm going to the office, and I thought, I grew up loving creative stuff, and now I'm getting paid to do this for a living. This is how the world works. So you can imagine how I felt when I walked into our own office, and I was met with mountains of paper and gray cubicles for days, and had to kind of get behind this idea of, how am I going to transform this company into something that I'm proud of? So immediately, we, of course, had to build a plan. I came from a corporate structure in the sense of there was no structure, but there was structure in the fact that there was managers and directors, and we had meetings, and we were collaborative, we had an open space, and we were allowed to kind of do what we wanted as long as we played within the guidelines. This was a whole new world. We had a president at the top, we had a flat line with a bunch of employees that really didn't talk to each other and didn't know how to share and didn't know how to collaborate. It became very evident that we had a pretty big problem. I remember my very first meeting. I think second week in, was like, I can't be a marketing director for a firm that I know nothing about. How can I start to transform this company? So I did what I did. I built this beautiful agenda, and I took so much time, and I cared so much about this, and I invited some heads of different kind of departments within the company, and the president, the vice president, and said, let's get in a room and let's have our first great meeting. 10 a.m. rolls around. I've got the agenda up on our 70-inch screen that's never been used ever once, but it does work. I wipe the dust off. And I'm sitting there and looking at my watch and going, well, it's 10 a.m. and no one's here. One person trickles in. The second person trickles in. Oh, the vice president didn't really know how to work his calendar, and they're not there, and the president did the same. And at that point, I closed my notebook and actually left the office. I thought I was absolutely done, and this was my last time being there. I just left this amazing job and this amazing dream that I had to come into a place that no one cared. That was a pinnacle moment in my career where I said, I can either choose to be angry at this moment or understand that we haven't created a culture to let anyone know that they should care about this. It hasn't been important in the past, so why is it important now? So that was a really, really interesting step. So being the millennial, the impatient person that I am, I wasn't willing to give up. And I thought, this is going to take a really long time to change this culture. So what if we just created our own culture? What if we created a subculture within the office? I could take my digital expertise, blend it with some insurance knowledge. We could build an office within an office. And this culture could lead by example instead of just painting a picture that no one can actually see. This, again, I don't know if it's the right answer and if I could go back if I would do it again, but we now started this. And it was so fascinating to see the kind of learnings and understandings that were coming out. We started out just by us, solving problems, and you're in a really close proximity. I think, so there's a picture of the office there. We actually tore down that wall. That used to be my office, where I sat there in the back of the office by myself going, what am I doing? I know nothing about this company. I know nothing about the people. Like, let's tear it down and let's come together. So we started to create, and it was so fascinating how quickly the things that were happening in this small space bled out. So we had morning stand-up meetings just because we had problems to solve in a close vicinity, and we'd have a coffee and we'd talk about it. Now falls into a weekly company huddle where we Skype in all of the branches, and we give high fives and we talk about all the wonderful things, and we have a catered breakfast, and we hug each other and love each other. Our technology, our processes, our workflows. The walls actually on the Petley Hare side of the company started to come down. Just last year or 6 months ago, we got rid of all the offices. And we got stand-up desks for everyone, and we said, let's collaborate more. So all these little things that we learned in this tiny space started to infect. And it was a really, really neat experience. I'll say that there's one thing I definitely learned, one thing I can take away, and I think we already touched on this a little bit, but you can't just put some paint on the wall and buy a fancy couch and think that. And I think going into this, I thought, maybe that would solve some of the problems. Yes, a space can definitely foster and help curate this great culture or build a collaborative space, but it is the people in there feeling safe, feeling protected, feeling like they're listened to, and having the transparency to know exactly what's going on in that space at the time. So we learned a lot. And if there's one thing I can leave you with, is this. I love this. Like, culture really just happens, and that's why I love it so much. It's the one thing that you can't write a fat paycheck for and say, I want culture. Let's just buy it. And quite frankly, if you're the person in the room thinking that, then your culture probably sucks. It takes work. It's like losing weight. You can't just say, I want to be thin. You have to put in the work and the time, day in, day out, and building this. So one thing I always dial back to in my career and thinking about is I never ever, in a time of being unhappy at work, thought I was going to leave or stay with a job based on the beanbag chair in the boardroom. So yes, these are fun things, but I take that back and think about that and want to thank you guys for the time, and I'm here for the rest of the day and would love to chat more. Thank you.